Our next talk looks at the Hackbase movement and its potential to change the world by building a new economy through hacking and co-living. We present Liam Kermos with the Hackbase Revolution.
Hi, welcome to my talk, and this talk is about hackbases. If you're not familiar with hackbases, they are residential hackerspaces, so a place where you can hack and also live. Why are we interested in hackbases? I'm sure none of you need convincing that there is a problem on our planet. We could talk at great length about the different aspects of the problems. The global situation on planet Earth is one of a number of problems in a large number of different areas, from environmental, such as biodiversity loss, resource depletion, climate change, and also many social areas. So we've seen social unrest around the world, political problems, fake news in particular. And if we look into the root causes of these problems, we can to some degree trace them back to the greater economic system that we have set up over the last few hundred years. And in particular, as individuals, we are living in an economic system where we can serve our own individual interests without really seeing the greater impact that we have on our planet. And ultimately, if we aggregate the impact of all of us totally on our planet, then the net effect is we're causing systemic problems throughout. On top of all of this, most recently we've got the COVID-19 pandemic. So whilst we're aware of a kind of emergency situation that we need to be dealing with, we're all sort of locked down and constrained in our ability to do things. Although also this does provide an opportunity to sort of say, actually, we are going to have to really change how we approach things, and that maybe there is more potential in that. So COVID-19 also has its positive side. This quote by Buckminster Fuller, he's basically saying that if you have a large entrenched system, rather than try to tackle it head on to change it, instead work to cultivate an alternative system in parallel and feed new growth rather than focusing on fighting the old system. And so I think the Hackbase movement in general and our project in Wales, Astralship, is attempting to do that, or be a part of a greater global movement of what we call building a new paradigm economy. The big question for us as a species right now is whether we as a species, as human beings, are able to evolve in a way that is sustainable, whether we as a species are capable of continuing to exist on planet Earth, or whether the human being has run its course and reached its end. We've done so much in the past 2,000 or so years of history, invented so much amazing technology, shown, incredible feats of what's possible as a being on this planet. In our history, where we're now facing the greatest challenge our species has ever faced, we're at a point where we now need to answer the question, are human beings a species that's going to be around for another 1,000, 10,000, long-term period, or are we a species that's going to destroy itself in the next few decades? That's really where we've arrived. And previously, until fairly recently, and I'm sure for some people it's still true, the overall paradigm was, in order to be successful in life, you should amass some personal wealth and have some children probably, and leave them in a better position economically, as individual units, a better position than you were when you came into this world. But what's happened with the limits of our growth of our system is that now we have to recognize that even if you leave your children in a situation of more personal wealth than you had, that's not going to help them very much on a planet facing systemic collapse. And wealth doesn't mean a lot when you don't have the essential resources to survive. Where do Hackbases come into this? Well, all these problems that we're aware of on our planet are going to need some very smart people to tackle them, and they really need to tackle them from within this alternative paradigm. It doesn't really help if we can only tackle the problems using the machine which is causing the problems in the first place. So if we need global finance to fund giant corporations to do research when they inherently only want profit, every solution we think we come up with is just going to come up with a number of extra problems. So instead, how can we provide a world where smart people can just get together, live holistically, live sustainably, and come up with solutions from within a new paradigm? And that's what this Hackbase revolution is all about. I bought this chapel in 2010 without having a very clear idea of what kind of project I wanted to do. In the same year, I sailed over to Ireland with a friend and really caught a bit of a bug for sailing and experiencing how sailing influenced our culture. At first, things went really well and we got quite a lot of money for developing our web app software, particularly in healthcare. Learned some hard lessons about business and ended up losing control of our spin-out creations, but developed a huge amount of learning and got a lot of inspiration for the project that we really wanted to do, which is developing this astral ship innovation Hackbase concept. So a ship is a really good metaphor for a Hackbase. On your ship you have to have everything you need, you have to supply that, and you can go in whatever direction you want to go. So a ship is a vehicle to take you somewhere, and we like to see our astral ship as being the vehicle that's going to take hacker collectives to a new future, a new paradigm economy, hopefully a future where human beings can demonstrate the potential of the species. And the other great theme that we like is pirates. We've drawn a lot from pirate history. Now there's a bit of a debate about how good pirates were, and there were certainly some pirates who were probably not very nice people. And of course we have to compare the pirates to the other people. The establishment were not particularly nice in those days either, and while we don't want to support random acts of violence and theft, we do want to acknowledge that pirates came up with some really good innovations. If you look at the times, some of the most important social innovations like universal suffrage, so pirates had votes on their ships, and social care. Lots of these things were developed first by the pirates at a time when the navy ships were more or less press-ganging individuals, forcing them to sail on their ships. And so at a time when out in the New World, pirates were kind of getting on building a new world, and it felt like, I'm sure to them, that the old world in Europe was completely out of touch with what was going on there. They would make pretty arbitrary, one day England was at war with France, and the next day it was at peace with France but at war with Spain. And I'm sure people living out in the New World didn't really care very much for these kinds of decisions. And so in some ways this feels a bit like a metaphor for what's going on in our world today, where the entrenched system of capital is coming up with new forms of quantitative easing and taking radical steps, having trade wars, etc. And really we don't care a huge amount about that. We want to get on and build the new world, the new paradigm economy from the ground up. And I think the most important appealing feature of pirates for us is the sovereignty that they had. So if you think about it, in those days, the only people that really had sovereignty in their lives were the pirates. They owned their own ships. They democratically decided what they wanted to do and were able to pursue their dreams, go where they wanted to go, without needing any kind of approval for anyone who wasn't on board their vessel. And that's the metaphor we like to follow, that we can believe in our dreams, go ahead and build systems that are going to impact the world in a positive way without needing to have any entrenched dogma dictate what we can and can't do. The New World from the 16th to the 19th century was largely the Caribbean. For us, it's a little bit different. The New World is kind of the old world, and that is the rural landscape. For our hack bases, there's a number of reasons we think rural locations are particularly an opportunity. Rural locations often suffered from a kind of brain drain where people needed to move to the cities to get the best jobs, and so the sort of smarter people often gravitated to cities to get better paid jobs, leaving the rural locations often deprived of those thinkers and people. Now, a lot of the reason for this is because of the limits of information connectivity and goods distribution, but really since the development of high-speed internet in rural locations, the game has somewhat changed. Now you can get all the information and goods you need in your rural location just as well as you can in a city. And for us, building our kind of new paradigm economy, we need these closed economic loops. So in particular, we need to be close to our source of food production. So to build our self-sufficient new paradigm economic model, we need to be close to the source of our food. As many of our dependencies, our inputs as we can, we need to provide for ourselves or provide locally in our local economy. And so rural locations, that's obviously much easier to do. And we have a emerging partnership with an organic farm just down the road, and these guys have been doing an amazing job growing organic veg for quite a few years now, and some hackers there have been building this farm horticultural robot. What you can see is a hydraulically driven robot. At the moment it's being remote controlled, but independently some hackers are developing the computer vision and the brains that will go into this soon. And hopefully this is going to effectively be reducing the cost of producing organic veg, which is a really important variable, as obviously there are many problems with the current industrial agricultural approach. I'm sure you're aware of that. Being closer to nature is generally good for human beings. We have better quality air, and closer to living systems is generally fulfilling for human beings. Also, in rural locations there is an opportunity to bring technology, knowledge and skills to local people who maybe don't have access to it as much as people in urban environments, and we can feel that as a Hackbase we get a lot of appreciation for the work we do, and we see this as being an important stream of the project, is to provide education technology to people. Now, there is classically a drawback with rural locations, especially for niche cultures like hacker culture, which is that generally because there's less people around, you'll probably find less people like you around. But that can be solved with a Hackbase, because you can bring your community of people together that you live with and have a group of like-minded people that you can engage with regularly. Now, having only one Hackbase, that may be limited, but if we can develop networks of Hackbases, then there's a real diversity of opportunities for people to move around and share ideas with with a diversity of people whilst living in rural locations. So when I bought the chapel in 2010, the astralship.org project really started at the beginning of 2017 and had some help from a friendly hacker, Mars, who gave a lot of support to the project. So we came up with this manifesto of things that we believe in and stand for as Astralship. The first one is embrace interdependence. So we acknowledge and embrace the fact that as human beings we are fundamentally dependent upon each other. We can see that more and more, I think, in our global world as certain technologies, for example certain genetic engineering technologies, become more and more powerful. We ultimately all are tending towards being able to destroy each other if we don't behave appropriately. And we think that human beings need to acknowledge this interdependence, that we shouldn't try to get away from it, we shouldn't try to keep ourselves in separated boxes and reduce the risk of each other. We need to acknowledge that we're all in this thing together. We also believe in radical localism, that really there are limits to how much a human being can comprehend and make sense of, and we only really work at a certain scale. So to keep ourselves stable as a human system, then we need to embrace radical localism. And this also works economically as much as possible. We can get our physical goods and services that we need from our local economy, then that's a much better way to run our planet. We believe in radical positive activism. So as that Buckminster Fuller quote earlier on was saying, rather than attack the current system, which is what we call negative activism and protest, although there may be some use in that, I think it's much more important to start building positive solutions, start demonstrating how human beings can live better, happier, with more well-being and creativity, and working towards the solutions that we need and living more sustainably. The next one is culture can change. Sometimes it feels like we're completely locked on this course and human beings can't change, but we have to realize that we've had decades now of what's actually called in the industry programming and advertising, the latest psychological research in how to manipulate us so that we consume and feel insecure that we don't have enough, and the result of all this are kind of destroying our planet. So our message is that let's try and reverse this. Now maybe no one's going to pay us to do it, but we can create reverse advertising or spreading positive messages, changing culture in a way that it isn't just about making profit, but is about helping us live in a better way as a species. And enhance innovation. Lots of research has been done in things like design thinking, how to improve innovation. But I think fundamentally for us the most important thing is that innovation is done with purpose by the innovators. So developing a way of life where people can really strongly connect with their personal purpose and work in that and get into deep states of flow, that's the way to really enhance innovation. Pirates are fun. I've already explained a bit about why pirates were cool and did lots of innovative things. And also we kind of believe in fun fundamentally, in that living with play is important, that work and play should not be separated, that you should be playful in every moment of your work and daily life, and that's something we subscribe to. And finally, humans can do it. We really believe that the human species, despite our shortcomings and the mistakes and things we've made, that we are actually evolving towards being a more aware species, and that we can fundamentally connect with the oneness of all of us, and we can live together in harmony with ourselves, with nature, and live on a more beautiful planet. It's going to be a journey to get there, but fundamentally we believe it's possible. So as I said, we're trying to bootstrap our own new paradigm economy, building from the grassroots up, and let's have a little look at how our economics works. So our model is probably quite different to what economics looks like for other entities. So we've been doing a lot of foundational work. We've had to install a lot of infrastructure, and we've been doing this with very little capital. So it's been a evolving project, learning about what we are, what we want to do, and how we're going to do it. And we've been sort of building up the skill level of the things we do. So moving from basic infrastructure to more advanced education and IT, and we're working towards this pinnacle where we're doing highly impactful multidisciplinary voyages. We have a number of spaces on the ship. We have our workshop, which we're developing, slowly getting more equipment and steadily bootstrapping. We have our co-working and places where you can work on a laptop. We have our VR space, and I think my favourite spot is the kitchen, where we have amazing vegan food being created by some wonderful chefs. And this is all really about trying to create a holistic community. Hackers as a community need to be able to provide for all our own needs. We're not wanting to be dependent on a commercial paradigm where we can buy everything we need from shops as much as possible. We want to be able to create what we need ourselves and provide the human services we need ourselves. And that's why we are a diverse community. We're not just with technologists, but also artists and facilitators, people with softer skills. It's all an important part of our community. These are some of the technologies that we really like and are using in the project. We're aiming to build replicatable systems, so Nixos is particularly good for that, and our goal is to be able to create a blueprint for turning an abandoned rural building into a hackspace. One of the biggest advantages of being in a rural location is of course cost. Buildings in rural locations are much cheaper than in urban locations, and in some cases they are even free. There are actually many historic buildings out there that if you can provide a convincing offer that you're going to take care and develop the building, they can actually be available for free. And here, this is a palace in India that's been abandoned for quite some time, and once we've developed our base in Snowdonia, we want to think about establishing a network of bases around the world and to reach out to more hackers. We're aware that it's going to be a while before we can supply everything we need, and so this is really a process of transition. We do as much as we can with what we have. It's going to be a while, I think, before we are making our own silicon. It's going to be a while, probably, before we are prototyping our own silicon chips, but it is certainly an area of active interest, whether we can be able to do this in the future. And more we want to create the goods and services as a network that we consume. So let's take a look at the economics of running the astral ship. Our biggest costs are food and energy. We don't have to pay any rent for this building at the moment, so if we can live in a low-cost, lean way, then our major running costs we can take care of locally in the local economy. So we can get most of our food we already get from the local farm, and although at the moment we're not producing any sustainable power, we hope to be able to do this in the near future. We have come up with this scheme of 4 different types of people that are on the ship at any one time. So first of all, we have the crew. Now the crew are the people that make the astral ship possible and provide support to all the other users and are working, building and developing the ship. We also have the voyagers. So voyagers are people that maybe come here to work on their own projects, and the crew provide them with everything they need. So the crew's goal is to really optimize the experience for the voyagers so that they can do the best possible work on whatever challenge or problem they're working on. We also have a group of people that we say are in recovery. These are people that perhaps have experienced burnout in the corporate world and are still struggling to kind of reignite their inner spark. And we think this is an important role for us to play. There's a limit to how many such people we can have at any one time, but we do think it's important that we play a role in healing some of the damage that's been done to many bright and talented people through burning out in the corporate environment. And finally, we have guests. So at the moment we have an Airbnb, which I'll come on to explaining next. So why don't we hear from one of our voyagers, one of our early pioneers testing the astral ship, and a member of the CCC hacker community. This is Gamithra. So Gamithra, can you tell us, how's your experience been as being one of our early voyagers on astral ship?
It's been absolutely great and absolutely unexpected in terms of how great it's been for me and how much it's allowed me to become the person I always wanted to be and to kind of work towards the goals I always wanted to work towards, and how rich I just got a lot of support from the people and from the environment. And I'm a bit scared actually, because I can't imagine going back not living in a place like this. I can't imagine living in a tiny apartment in a big city with no people around me, no space around me, and we're just rushing and having to run around. Here, just it's really quiet. But you've got that space, and you've got like people around you to support you in that space, and kind of divide tasks in a way that everyone is just doing enough, and everything just works out pretty nicely. And one of the, and it's one of the main things people need is that feeling of belonging somewhere. This place really facilitates that and kind of provides people that feeling, whereas living alone, living with a small amount of people that you might not even know that well will never kind of provide that feeling of home. I think that's one of the greatest values astralship has had for me.
That is great.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about what you've been working on while you're here?
Oh, I've been working on myself a lot, like just kind of figuring out what I'm doing, what my mission is, and where I want to go with life. Been doing my daily remote work, and been taking on some really new cool projects, and one of them actually turned out to be so cool and so new that it's kind of transformed where my life's going entirely. When I came here I was a different person, and now I'm leaving with all these new things that are happening in my life, and new people I met, even not inside here but online while being here, because I had the space and the time and energy to meet them. And I'm leaving as a totally different person, which is absolutely unexpected, but really, really cool. It's like an incubator, like startup incubators. This is like a human incubator. It's awesome.
So this is our model. You can see we have the astral ship, we engage with the farm, we get our food, and we might provide various services and even goods to actors in our local economy. So recently we made some furniture for the farm, and we'll be exchanging that for some vegetables. Now we are interested in setting up a mutual credit system with some partners in the UK, and we'd really like to see this as a potential to cultivate a sustainable green economy in the local area. Now, we imagine transitioning to a slightly more complicated model where astralship is primarily focused on its global interactions, and we're connecting with our global hacker connections and working on global problems and challenges. But at the same time, we'll be connecting with a local base, a local hackerspace, where we seek to accelerate and support and facilitate local players and local actors to work from the grassroots up, building the local green economy. Now we do have another chapel in the nearby town of Carnarvon, and although this is very early stage, we're envisaging setting up this as a public hackerspace and co-working space for local people, and also a community education space. We really want to try to facilitate the more kind of open source approach that we're very familiar with in hacker world, and convey this message to local people that really knowledge is something that we all benefit if we all share freely with each other, and we can educate each other and skill up each other. So we really want to use this other base for that purpose. I'm going to play a video now. You will hear some Welsh language in this, and it has both Welsh and English, and it's just an early stage video we've made of the historic chapel that we bought, that we plan to do a project in the future.
Troedio'r llwybr ymlaen.
To walk the way ahead.
Y ddaear yn atsain dan droed.
Hear the earth beneath us speak.
Ein camau yn guriad calon tuag adre.
Our footsteps marching heartbeats home.
So this is the kind of goal pyramid. As I said, we've been building things up. We started with basic infrastructure, and we're slowly developing more advanced projects, technology education, and we're doing lots of live streaming and media production. And so from our income perspective, we have our running costs that we need to keep this project going. Obviously, construction is something which can be very expensive, and we're definitely trying to source as much of our construction materials as possible. There's a local timber yard we're using, but these costs can be quite substantial, and there's a certain amount of we're living without. But our long-term goals is to generate enough income that we can really strongly develop the infrastructure here, and over time, hopefully, we will be able to invest quite a lot of capital in this building. For now, the base of our pyramid is really hosting guests. So we have an Airbnb. That was really our simplest income stream to get started, and we have been quite successful. People have really enjoyed the experience of coming here, and building on top of that, then we have co-working, which is people coming here to work on their own projects and just using the space as a nice space to come and co-work. But our real goal is to host voyages. Now, these are quite loosely defined, but it's any kind of experience where people come and use the ship for perhaps a week or two to work on something. And right at the top there, I've put the kind of pinnacle goal is to have multidisciplinary innovation voyages where people with lots of quite advanced skills, perhaps needing quite a lot of serious facilitation to really tackle some giant challenges. And that's definitely the dream, is to curate and produce and support really important voyages that are going to come up with innovations we really need. Now, if 1 in 7,000 people is a astral pirate, or someone that would like to live or engage in a Hackbase and be one of these 50 people, then in the UK there would be 200 of these Hackbases dotted around, probably in rural locations, perhaps not too far from major cities, but that would create quite a strong network where probably individuals wouldn't be able to visit all of them. And with these same figures of 1 in 7,000, then globally that would translate to 20,000 Hackbases. The UK having about 1% of the global population. Now, if we had 20,000 Hackbases around the world, I think we could really have an impact on our planetary situation, and hopefully some of these massive daunting challenges that we're facing could be tackled, and we could start to come up with solutions and start to give some confidence to each other that human beings are really not so bad, and that maybe we can imagine living harmoniously on this planet together and going to the stars one day. Yeah. There are still many challenges ahead. We have still a lot to do. We are very short of capital, and we still need a lot of skills. We've had a huge amount of skills contributed to us on goodwill, and we're still going to need a lot of help. Particularly, we need architects, people to help us design the blueprints of systems, replicatable systems. We need web developers, marketing people. There's really a huge range of potential skills that are needed, and really the primary requirement is enthusiasm for the mission. If you want any more information about astralship, please check out astralship.org. There are lots of videos we've been making on PeerTube and also on more mainstream social media platforms. So with that, I'll conclude the talk and ask for any questions.
You're live.
You're watching the Hackbase Revolution with Liam Kermos. Liam, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks, Rob. It's good to be here.
And we'd like to invite those of you attending Hope 2020 to ask Liam your questions. Please post your questions to the live stream Q&A channel in our Matrix chat, and they will be relayed here. We've already got a lot of good discussion going on there, and some questions. One member of the audience asks, how does this idea differ from communes in the 1960s? What lessons from those efforts would be used to improve this experiment?
Well, clearly the technological situation today is very different to what it was in the 1960s. And that's, I think, a really interesting question, is whether some of the decentralization technologies that are emerging, i.e. the kind of blockchain stuff, can have a significant impact on the ability of that type of commune project to impact wider society. Can that kind of rebalance and create clearer boundary points and social structures? I guess, I mean, it's quite hard to make too much of a comparison. The communes were quite diverse, and a lot of experimentation. Really great things happened and were discovered in that period. So I think there's definitely roots that we have there.
What's the reaction been like from the local community relating to your Hackbase?
Yeah, it's been really interesting. We're in quite an interesting, I would say, cultural situation here in Northwest Wales. It's primarily a Welsh-speaking world, and that community is often kind of perceived as being quite insular in some ways. Let's just say it takes a while to really be able to communicate what you're about, and to feel trusted, I think, by that community. Early on, I think, in a way, COVID-19 was quite an interesting and useful period for us. Early on in the lockdown, there were a few incidents, I would say. I won't repeat exactly what was said about us on social media, but it wasn't positive. Now, it may have been a small minority of local people that expressed those sentiments, but it was a chance for us to say, hey, no, this is not what we're about. We're not some crazy hippie commune all about having orgies, but actually we are working on 3D printing visors for the hospital, or various positive things we're doing. So it was an opportunity to open up that conversation.
Yeah. Along those lines, another member of the audience asks, how is the Hackbase coping with COVID in terms of social distancing, preventing the spread of the virus through the air, washing dishes, etc.?
Well, I mean, one of the things that was very clear from the whole pandemic was that if everyone lived in a Hackbase, COVID would be no problem at all. we are in a remote location. We're in a community in a single building. So as long as we wear PPE when we go to the shops, then it's very easy to completely isolate the building and live as an independent community with no real possibility of COVID spreading into our building. We had some thoughts of what we're going to do if one of us starts developing symptoms, and thankfully that wasn't a situation that really happened. There were a few times we were like, oh, is this it? And unless we all had it with very, very, very minor symptoms, then I would say we didn't have COVID.
Another member of the audience asks, how do you prevent these kinds of idealistic projects from becoming a catch-all for hacker efforts and ensure that credit is given where credit is due?
I might need some help to interpret that question. Is it saying that catch-all for hacker efforts? So I don't know. It sounds like maybe are we kind of pirating the hacker name to, I don't know. Can you expand that question for me?
Perhaps if the asker of that question wishes to expand it in the chat, but we'll move along to another. Someone asks, have you considered organizing those hacker voyages with organizations like Communitier, who help communities set hacker and maker spaces up and rebuild after disasters?
Yeah, that sounds like a really, not aware of Communitier, so that sounds like something I know. Is that in the live stream chat?
It is. Cool.
Okay, I'm going to pick that up. Communitier. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thanks for telling me about that. And
it is what our community is about. A lot of people throwing in their ideas and seeing what happens. Someone asked, can you share more details on your mutual credit initiatives? Do you also barter with vendors and others?
Okay. Basically, we have a contact with someone running something called the Open Credit Network, and he knows way more about it. They have my understanding, this may be out of date. I think I last talked to him right at the beginning of lockdown, but they have a kind of UK-wide trading system where I think everyone can have up to something like £500 a month of credit from the network. And then, I'm not sure if it's launched yet, but they were developing kind of sub networks where you could have a local network or a network of partners in a certain space that trade together and set a limit of credit with each other. So the plan is to work with him with Open Credit Network and various actors that we interact with, like the farm, and just get a local network going of people using it. I think it's kind of like at the end of the month, if you have some outstanding balance, then you settle at the end of the month. So there isn't too much risk for the local network. That's my understanding of where it's at the moment. That's Open Credit Network.
And along these lines, are you free to share like maybe details of how you fund your day-to-day operations in a space like this?
Yeah, sure. The first thing is just to be extremely lean. We really don't have a lot of costs other than food and energy and some taxes and a few other bills. And we contribute. We supply it through our Airbnb, through contributions from voyagers directly to the running costs, and currently from my savings. Before I was working on Astralship, back in sort of 2014-15, when we were a software company, we seemed to fairly easily get quite large sums of money for software projects. And it's been very much on the opposite end of the spectrum. Setting up this project has been a lot more real and a lot less money in the bank. But I think we are really getting a strong team together where possibility of doing some kind of tech voyages where we generate, even if we had sort of £5,000-10,000 come in, I think it would really accelerate our project, let us do much more things. So probably that, hopefully at least, it's not too far away.
Mentioning the Airbnb, like what's the reaction been like for clients of that when they show up, perhaps used to showing up to maybe a box standard apartment and instead finding your space?
Yeah, that's been interesting. I think what's kind of happened is the comments that people leave after they're here and haven't had an experience sort of describe, and it started out with like, you know, it's all under construction and it's all a bit of a mess and chaotic, but there's some interesting stuff happening, and that's kind of gravitated towards, as the project has developed and the experience for the guests has got more refined, so the comments have kind of led in that direction. I think so we naturally attract people who are looking for something a bit more unusual, an experience, maybe kind of interested in art or technology, and it'll be working really well. There's like a good feedback.
A member of the audience asks, have you given some thought that this might devolve into a fiefdom, and what have you done to prevent this?
I think it's quite early days. At the moment, I'm kind of normally the captain. We don't have like a kind of complicated explicit governance structure, but we have explored sociocracy 3.0, and if we get, you know, there's coming a point when we scale up when we probably need to have that kind of system. I'm still not completely certain whether we want to go down the let's all have crypto keys and do everything as a kind of DAO type thing. But I'm certainly aware that there are a lot of there's a lot of, you know, thought been done by people in the field about what optimal systems are, like the sociocracy people, and we will draw from their experiences and put something in place. I think that's effective when the time becomes necessary. Last summer we had some guys from a group called WeShare. They're quite connected with Spiral people, and I think those guys are doing some really interesting work in how to set up flat organization effectively. I would say I started out here with, before it was officially Astralship, but after the software company, with quite an anarchic situation. And there was a long time when I guess there was a lot of learning going on, but not really a lot of progress. And it got to a point where I felt like, okay, I need to say, I'm in charge of this ship, and whoever wants to be here, whoever doesn't, don't. And let's get the project moving. And I think that's really, really helped. It's like really started moving forward much faster, and I can now feel I can again step back again and say, okay, let's go back to being a flatter organization. Now we're clear about what our purpose is and where we're going.
Very interesting indeed. How can people find more, as we've just got a minute or two to wrap up? How can people find more about your project and perhaps get involved, get in contact?
Get in contact through the website or through social media. Manning social media is sometimes difficult with other things going on, but we are there. Yeah, you can get in contact. We'd love to hear from hackers all over who want to get involved.
And, could you give that website out one more time, please?
It's astralship.org.
Astralship.org. This has been a very interesting discussion. Liam Kermos with the Hackbase Revolution, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks very much, Rob. Been awesome.